Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. My name is Finn Lockwood. I'm the trans program curator here at New Haven Pride Center, and we're so excited for Trans Day of Visibility tomorrow. We've had an awesome week of programming, and I am really looking forward to our conversation tonight. I am going to be introducing the program Trans New Haven History shortly. But before then, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the land on which we are hosting this event. The center was founded and operates on the traditional lands of the Mohegan, Mashantucket Pequot, Eastern Pequot, Schaghticoke, Golden Hill Paugussett, Niantic, and the Niantic peoples. From whatever occupied land you are on, please take a moment to acknowledge and honor all of the Native peoples whose lands we all occupy and the history of the places we know. Find out more about Native lands by visiting native-land.ca. So thank you for that. And we are now going to introduce Patrick Dunn, our executive director, and he is going to be introducing our guest.
Thank you so much, Ben. Hello, everybody. I'm not used to being on this side of the camera. Usually I'm the one behind pressing buttons. But because this is a good friend of mine, Lynn Waters, also known as AKA a Bubblicious, legendary drag entertainer. I figured that since we're friends, I would do today's interview.
And I'm very thankful for that.
And I'm excited because I feel like we're going to talk about things that we don't talk about a lot.
Well, that and more.
And more, yeah. And we'll do a little kikiing and whatnot. But for our audience, if you don't already know who Lynn Waters, AKA Bubblicious, is, Bubbles, as I fondly call her, is an activist, is a proud Black woman, is a proud Black trans woman, is a drag legend, is a board member of the New Haven Pride Center, is so many things to so many people. And I'm so excited to spend a little time with you talking about trans history in New Haven.
Thank you. And I vogued the house down.
Yes. I was there. I remember that. Actually, we were just talking right before we got on about how different
things have changed in New Haven.
How things have changed in New Haven. But I want to go all the way back because I want to start from the beginning and start with saying, kind of thinking through your own experience as a trans woman.
Okay.
What was the time period in which you kind of started that, not to use a pun, started that transition from drag entertainer extraordinaire to trans drag entertainer extraordinaire?
Okay. It's okay. We started around high school era.
Okay.
I knew there was something.
So 1920. Just
Can I put my finger up on the TV? I'm like, okay, I don't want to. But you know what? I will take that as long as I'm here and I'm still doing what I got to do. But high school era is when I knew there was something different, and when I went, and I mean, my family knew I was the feminine one, and that kind of thing. But I mean, at that age, I still hadn't come to terms with it myself. Even though I was still, going around and, meeting people, whatever. But when I went away to college, I went to Parsons School of Design in New York. And I got out of this town as quickly as I could. That's when, I started seeing, like, performers and, in drag. Because before then, if I saw somebody dressed as a woman, it was kind of scary because I never wanted to be assumed as that. Even though I knew I was very effeminate, but I did, having the kind of family I had and the father that I typically had, I knew that wasn't going to be a good thing. So I never tried to go down that path. Then after high school, college, meeting people and being brought into that the circle of friends, the ball scene, and having my eyes just open to so many different things, I became more comfortable in my own skin. And it's like when you get in a community that people are like, who are, showing you the beauty that you don't see in yourself, you can do more things. And that's basically what happened with me. Came back to New Haven after school, started doing like little drag here and there, nothing serious. And it wasn't until I came back from, no, it was before Germany. I was working at this place called Michael's Arts and Crafts. And I was their floral designer. And a friend of mine one day said something and it clicked in my brain. He knew me in both eras of like in the club scene and in me at work and things. I was still working as a boy. And he's like, why, Bubbles? He's like, why do you always seem so happy on the weekends? And when he said it to me, it was like, and I'm like, you know what? I have this one life. And there's no, I mean, and at that age, I mean, I was working, had a little apartment of my own. I was like, okay, I really didn't answer to anybody else. So I was like, you know what? And at that point, I took anything that looked and seemed in a male attire, got rid of it. That same week, I changed my name. I came home, I went to visit my mom. I'm like, this is my new name. She wasn't happy. But I mean, because I went from being named after my father to being named after my mother. I mean, she was my closest member. She's always been my closest person in my life. So I in homage to her, I took her name, the Lynn Waters.
And your mom is such a big cheerleader of you now. I can't imagine.
It took, this is what I tell young queens and trans and people that are coming out. You've dealt with that internally for 5, 10, how many years? And you have to give those people time to analyze and come to terms with it themselves. In the beginning, my mom, it was hard for her to deal with it. It was hard for her to call me Tia. And she still called me Bubs, which is okay because it's like that I lived as Bubs before I even lived as Tia. So it didn't, you know, she still acknowledges me as her daughter. And, you know, you have to give your family space. But at a certain point, you have to let them know, if you cannot respect my choices, then I just can't be around you. And that happened with my grandmother, my mom's mother. And I had to go, I said, look, I'm not going to keep living a life that's going to, at some point, maybe want me to hurt myself. And I know you wouldn't want that to be the case. So this is the choice. So either you can jump on board or that will basically break our communication. And then at that point, my grandmom's was like, you know, I learned from cooking from her. We used to bake and, you know, I used to garden with her. So it was you know, she looked towards me for a lot of things. And it's like, you know, and she was a little bit hurt when I did make this change because, again, they have their ideas of what they want your life to be.
Right.
And at some point, it's like, you know, I have to make a decision what my life is for me.
Right, it's your life.
I mean, we only get one chance at this, so.
Exactly. Well, and so when you started the process of transitioning, you were already in the club scene. You were already performing on the weekends. Gotham.
Yeah.
And so I've always noticed, unlike many places in the country, trans performers are given a lot of space to be equals in drag spaces in Connecticut. At least now. And since I've been in the scene, you know, which is a little longer than I want to admit out loud, but about 18 years I've been in the drag scene. And there's always been trans performers, which is why.
But we start, okay, a lot of performers started off as femboys doing shows. And we used to do shows in straight venues.
Right.
And it wasn't only until I think the 40s or the 50s where we had this influx of like, you know, Christianity and people started getting pushed back into the closet. Because if you really research history, I mean, there were a lot of like, you know, we used to do gay, they used to have drag shows at Harlem and
in the Apollo.
No, the Apollo, yes. At the Apollo Club. They used to run girls and let them perform there. And then that in itself was crazy because you would think that, it would be so hard for us there.
Well, and ironically, with the some of our reviewers may not know this history, but the history of the tea dance, which is still very popular time for LGBTQ people, particularly gay men, but in general queer people. But the tea dance originates from the 1910s, 1920s, and this idea that there was this tea time for young people, and during tea time when all the formal adults were having tea and eating crumpets, the youngins were off dancing in underground bars, and they often had drag entertainers all the way up and through the mid 30s.
And that's what I'm saying. It was a cultural shift to the right, and that just kind of made it harder for us, the people in my lifestyle, to live out and be. It was never that because even in the Black community, we've always had people in our community that were feminine and whatever, and you just didn't speak on it. And that was kind of, it's still sad, but we've always been in every community.
Right.
I mean, whether they wanted to see us or wanted to recognize us, I mean, they know we've always been there.
Yeah. Well, so fast forward to New Haven, you're doing drag, you're starting transitioning. What was the New Haven scene like in that time? And dare I ask what year that was?
Well, it depends. I mean, there's always different factions of transitioning. Not every girl is going to go and, because at that point, my transition for me was pretty simple into it. Because I was a big girl, I was almost 400 pounds at one point in my life. And when I lost the weight, I had ample breasts and thighs, and I was very shapely, and I had that naturally. So it wasn't that I had to start a bunch of hormones and things like that. I'm lucky and I'm blessed in that. I knew other girls who had who were starting from rock bottom, and they had to do the ample amount of hormones and the shots and the it's not as easy as it was now. It was a little difficult getting your name changed. The hospitals, it's not even close to what it was now. Like it is now, where we have anger initiative and anger help initiative and stuff like that. Because it was you go to the hospital and it's you may get a doctor who wasn't going to be an asshole to you, or a nurse that would mispronounce your name openly, not even oh, I'm sorry, just openly mispronounce your name. There were no laws,
right?
So it was, it could get really nasty at times.
When I've heard stories from trans women in your generation, of they were performers and they would buy their hormones in the alley behind the club, and
I mean, it was okay. It was okay, in the clubs, you knew who sold them. You would either go to their house or you get a shot from them, or there were certain girls was it Maria, Angie, in Hartford? There was a one queen that was known for giving girls shots, and she was really. I mean, she was pumping a lot of girls. I mean, lips, and I mean that's where a lot of girls started out, and I'm kind of glad we don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
Or not as much, because it wasn't very safe. But you did what you had to do, because in transitioning, if you don't look the part, it's going to be hard. I mean, it's going to be hard for you to go out in public. It's going to be hard for you to work. It's going to be hard, just in general, to every day look at a mirror of an image that does not coincide with your, what
you see in your head.
What you see in your head. So, I mean, and naturally, if you not now, you see kids taking hormones as early as 13, and that will take all that masculine traits and push them to the side, and that would never be heard of back then.
Right.
Never.
Well, it's hard to hear of right now with all of the
now
states that are going nuts.
But see, that was only, I mean, the last 4 years with the redheaded ass. Because again, everything that Obama had put into office that make things a little better. I mean, he wasn't perfect, but he did things to make it better. As soon as this redheaded person got in office, he vetoed and he got rid of. And a lot of girls I know who were going to the state and whatever to get things done were like, okay, we got to get this done now because you don't know how long it's going to be available. They're trying. I mean, we can't do this now. We can't go to the bathroom now. We can't. They're trying to. I mean, you can't serve in the army anymore. I mean, all those things were like, a direct towards, and it wasn't. I mean, yes, it says gay, but they were directed towards trans people to push us back into the closet, back into the alleyway. And, I don't understand why, because the thing is, we can work. We can do anything, anybody else does. So why would you, want us to be, in this illegal area? Then you can call us like, vagrants and miscreants and,
harass you.
Yeah. I mean, as long as you keep us, downtrodden and poor, it's like, we're easy targets.
Yeah. Well, and so thinking back to, and I don't know if this is actually really your era, but I'm thinking of like New Haven in the 90s, right?
90s. That's around Kurtz and.
Right. Kurtz and Gotham was, that was like the height of Gotham.
When they had the 3 floors.
Right. When they had all 3 floors and they were getting named fancy titles from like Advocate. And,
well, I mean.
And Pride was still on the New Haven Green, and
oh my God, I miss that. I miss that so much.
Someday we'll be back.
No, I hope so, because it was like at that point. I mean, people. It was like a whole town experience. I mean, to take over the whole downtown Green was. I mean, my grandfather would be one of the first people in front of the stage. He was very prompt about everything. And he would get down like 2 hours early, sitting in his stool chair with his cooler, and it just brings back some great memories. I have a picture of my mom and I from that being on the Green. But with Gotham, I mean, at one point, I feel sorry for younger generations that they don't get to understand and feel what it was like to have not only a club, but to have 3 floors in New Haven besides Partners, and then have the after hour. And it was the closest thing, yes, and it was the closest thing we ever had to New York style club. Mm-hmm. And it was and with the influx of like, computer and internet, it killed us, It helped us in a lot of ways, but it just harmed us, and a lot of like socially.
Yeah,
it just killed the whole scene.
So going back to the 90s, what was it like in New Haven as a young trans person in the 90s? Like, was it?
For me, being that, I mean, I always worked. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't have one of those stories of not being able to work because at that point, if most people assumed I was either effeminate or feminine, mm-hmm. or a woman. I mean, it was when I was working with Andrew Rubinoff, who I had worked for like almost 30 years since high school. So I always had that job. Besides any other jobs like with Michael's and other retail things I would go and get. We were at Yale, and it was really funny. I went to use the bathroom at that point. It was a quote unquote man's bathroom. And the security guard came in and said, "Excuse me, miss, you're in the wrong bathroom," and he kicked me out. And those are the kind of stories that I have. I mean, I have sisters who have really bad stories about, going into stores and being accosted, going into restaurants and, having food thrown at them. And the one thing about my house and my family, my mom and I, we've always been like, we've always had our home open to my sisters and even my gay and lesbian brothers and sisters. my house has had like it was. I don't think I know it's art, but it's always been like a safe space for the gay community, and I have to really really commend my mom because um she was always open to like nurture and help any of my friends and loved ones in that aspect. Um, but as far as me coming out, my story, I mean, it wasn't a big transition. It wasn't like
Right.
I had to like, stop being this and be this. It was more or less I changed my attire. I didn't wear I was able to wear dresses and and basically I would just wear a bra because I had the chest for it. Um, and it was more or less, I didn't have to worry about my job because I had been working for the same person for so long that they were family. So it wasn't like I had to worry about, okay, is this person at my job going to allow me to transition? And, they knew me as Bubbles. And it's like, then when I changed and legally changed to Tia, it was basically like, okay, what name are we putting on your checks?
Right. Well, that's great though.
And I'm very blessed. I'm very, very, very blessed in that because again, I know the hard stories out there, and I know, and I've seen what kids go through, and when they're being, pushed out and bullied and beat up for no reason, or being used in the streets because um, when you don't have a place to live on your own, you gravitate towards whoever's going to take care of you for the night.
Right.
And I've seen that here, and I've seen it in New York, and it's scary. It's scary because there was a small period of time where I lived. I was in New Haven, and for some reason I was like sick of it, and I took my sewing machine, some material, a bag of clothes, and I went to New York. And I was supposed to stay with friends, and it didn't work out. So I ended up living on the street for a couple of months. And in that time, I was like, I met other girls, and it's like when you're in that community, they're like, oh, you should do this. Because when you don't have anything, you're like, okay, what do I do? How do I survive? And it's like, it's too easy to get pushed into something that you can basically put your life at risk.
Right.
And that's one of the things now that I try and like push to girls and young people. We have so many implements and so many programs that you don't have to do that. And I tell them, even if you don't want to go to college, if you get a trade under your belt, it doesn't matter so much what you look like because you have a skill that is going to be needed. Like Gateway, Gateway, and what's the other program where they take high school kids and they give them trade?
Oh, I know which program you're talking about because we refer some youth there sometimes. It's out like
Out towards Southern.
Yeah.
But we really need to find out the name of that because more trans people, especially young kids, matter of fact, just young kids in general, people of color, understand if you don't want to go to college, if you have a trade, some of the richest people in this country today and still are people, plumbers, contractors, people that work with their hands, all those things that they used to teach in school to us. And they've taken them out of school.
Yeah.
And I personally believe that they did that for a reason in the Black community. Because we don't have any automotive clubs anymore. We don't have any woodworking classes anymore, no home ec classes. And these are things basically that would set kids up for further in life than just a class on like English and history, especially history that really doesn't chronically speak to you in truth.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's a whole nother subject right there. But it's like, I mean, instead of pushing all that down their throat, give them life skills that they won't have to ever worry about going out into the community and not making it.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I try and push as a older person to younger people. It's like, especially to my younger sisters and brothers. It's like you may not blend in the beginning, But as long as you have a skill or a skill set for something, you never really want for anything.
Well, and so I want to pick up on something you said, because you said your home has always been a safe haven for young people, and maybe not even young people, your peers, right? Is that what jump-started your activism and the work that you do as a trans woman, as an activist? Because I see you as an activist.
But that's the thing. I don't see me as an activist. I see me as somebody. I see something and I speak up.
Right.
And other people look at that as activism. I think of that as doing what I should be doing, and more people should be doing it. If you see a child in trouble, you don't talk about it. You do something about it. If you see somebody that needs help, you know, or someone that's missing, you don't talk about it. You go out and say, well, how can I help your family? I mean, even if it's just bringing over some food so that person doesn't have to cook, so they can spend time searching for that person, or they have to go to the hospital because their family member was beat up, and you know they don't have to cook when they go home after being in the hospital all day.
Right.
Those are things that that's how I was brought up. So it wasn't like my mom always, took care of people. She always worked very hard. So, and seeing that's the kind of woman I always wanted to be. So it wasn't like a thing that I like, oh, I gotta, show my face here. I gotta do this. It was like, no, I wanted to perform. I performed. I always reveled in my own. I mean, once I became comfortable in my own skin, it showed. So it wasn't like, I love the fact that I was a Black person, and it's like that showed. So that people picked up on that. Being a person of color, I mean, I worry about my young brothers and my sisters, because people of color are the only ones that know what it's like to go. Once you give your child a license, or even when you're driving, you know what it's like to go and have to drive and feel unsafe, not because you want to get jacked, not because your car is messed up, because if you see a blinking light behind you, you get a chill down your back, because you know what? At a certain point, you could lose your life.
Right.
And those are things that we speak up on, because not because I want to be an activist, but because it's not right.
Right.
It's just not right.
And I'm gonna jump from that to your art, which includes both your art as a drag artist, but your art as a visual artist, because you're an incredible visual artist.
Thank you.
And we did an exhibit of your work. Was it during the pandemic? I think it was right before the pandemic.
It was after.
Was it after the pandemic?
Yeah, because a lot of it was because I was isolated, and it was while they were doing a lot of the George Floyd marching.
That's right, because you did the piece "Strange Fruit."
Yeah, and your knee doesn't go here.
Right.
Where I was an image of a Black male laying on his stomach with his arms behind his back, with a sign on his shoulder saying your knee does not go here. Those images were played over in my head because we were stuck in the house, and that's all you see. I mean, I can't logistically go and march everywhere because health reasons.
Right. But you do, because I have seen you on the steps of the Supreme Court, and I've seen you on the New Haven Green.
I try. I mean, but the thing is, I can't go into big crowds.
Right.
It's just not safe for me. I can't do cold weather because I'm anemic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my body shuts down and stuff like that. So it's like it has to be like nice weather, or I'll be on the outskirts, because I can't do big crowds anymore because I use a walker. And but I will still show my face.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's important that if you feel strongly about something, it's not a point of just saying it. It's a point of going out and doing something about it. Rallies are for media things to show people that there are a lot of people unhappy about a certain issue, or they are happy about a certain issue, and they need to be seen. And I cannot do it.
Yeah, it's just part of who you are.
It's just how it's raised.
Yeah, but I mean, I think there's a lot of power in that, and I think there's a lot of power in, you know, unfortunately, in the United States, Black trans women have one of the lowest, if not the lowest, life expectancy.
Yeah.
And so for young, I think it's particularly young Black trans people to see someone who is exceeded that expectancy, right?
Yeah.
And being visible and being present and making a difference and commenting and speaking on what is right. There's so much power in that. And that's one of the reasons why I think of you as an activist, because your existence as a human out speaking is activism in itself.
Okay, that's how, that's one thing. All I'm doing is making it week to week, year to year, day by day.
Right.
I haven't given up on my, with all my physical ailments, I still have to get up. I still have to, make myself happy and
make yourself a costume.
Yeah, and just be happy. And as far as the young people that are coming up, it's like we've made so many strides. There's still more to do, and at some point, we have to make it known. Like right now, the Black female, whether it's trans or cis, we're still on that bottom level. It's still cis trans, but it's still bottom of the totem pole, and it's like there's such a community there that I don't understand why people aren't defending them. And why we are all, they need us, but then they don't treat us as if they need us. Right. So and it really hurts my heart when I hear of a young trans person getting accosted just going to the store or just trying to live their best life. And luckily, and that's another thing, it's like we have to, okay, if you are a person of color or a trans person of color, or just a person, period, you have to make sure that you vote for the right people. You have to make sure that you're seen in these areas because, again, those laws are what govern all of us. And if we do not push the right people into these offices, they will slowly take away rights that you don't even know you had or don't have. It's disgusting that we finally in this country have made it a law that you cannot lynch anybody.
Right, 2 days ago.
Lynching. It's been on the books for over 100 years. They've been fighting a law to say you cannot lynch a person in this country and get away with it. So if that is what we're fighting in that context of, political, and again, that's where you may say I'm being, a activist. But the thing is, how can I not sit and say we need to get out and vote? We need to make a stance and who's governing our towns, who's making laws, who are we sending to Congress to speak for us,
right?
Okay, and you have to open your. And I know too many people in my life who are like, oh, it's not gonna matter. People don't care. It's like that kind of thinking is what gives those people on that right that much more power, right, to make those laws and basically govern your life. Right. And that's one thing I can never do. I can't.
Well, you can just look at New Haven as an example, in the last couple mayoral elections, and this is no dig at any of the winners, but they've only won with like 8% of the population's vote because the rest of the population isn't voting.
Exactly.
And imagine if even 30% more showed up, how much more competitive or how completely different candidates could be in in those positions.
We've gotten, and the thing is, they've gotten so lax. Was it just Stefano? Like,
Stefano, he was around for 20 years.
and that was the biggest shame. I mean, he sold so much of our new. I mean, that's one thing about the mayor. That's one of my big gripes about that whole office. And it's like, how much of New Haven are they going to give away to Yale? And then homeowners and people who own property in New Haven are left to like pick up the pieces. And it's disgusting. It's like they can buy a street and build homes and build offices, and their tax rates are nothing compared to what New Haven, especially depending on what area you live in, what your taxes are. I know, and I've sat and watched my mom go crazy about our little house here in New Haven, and we don't live in the hills or anything, but it's like, we still have to, worry about and what they do now is what they're doing is going on in the low income housing areas and bringing down, they're arbitrarily lowering the value of your homes. So even if you wanted to sell your home, you couldn't do it because again, once you go to the books, it's like, oh, your home is only worth this amount. And we're fighting like the whole absolute landlord thing. Again, not an activist, but this is my life. This is my life, and I gotta talk about it. So it's like, it's just, I know things that you have to speak on. So.
Well, so we're getting to the end of our time.
Okay.
So I wanted to give
something
you
fun.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to give you some space to say kind of because I've heard you say this before, like, it's so different. It's so different. So what is something, let's say there's a young person watching right now that you wanna give them the hope of like, this is how much I've seen change as a Black trans woman here in New Haven over the last X amount of decades, years, however many years you want to
Okay,
up
the
to.
whole...
But positive and giving hope, not scolding.
No, I mean, one of the best things now for a trans person is accessibility and being able to get the health care you need, getting the legal things you needed as far as changing your name. All these things have come and have gotten so much easier. It's not like you have to trek, far and away to get, looked at by a doctor anymore. I mean, Yale and New Haven, you can go right here and get meds and hormones and, anger health we have now here, which is a beautiful thing. I mean, you have a community of people who are trans working in that field, in that office space, which makes it that much easier that you're going to talk to someone and they know what you're going through. They know what you need. I remember at one point I would ask the doctor or something about hormones, and they're like, well, I'll have to get back to you. Because it wasn't something that they even dealt with. So that is a beautiful thing to me. Now it's like kids nowadays, there's programs, and as I said, Job Corps. Please,
yes.
If you have any young person that does not know what they want to do with themselves, whether they be trans or not, they're young people, a person of color, and they may not be the most astute person. They may not be headed for college. Please gear them towards something that will better their lives, regardless of that fact. And I wholeheartedly think that is one of the most beautiful things that I wish we had that. If I would have had that in high school, I would have done that as opposed to going to college. I could have taken my art classes, secondary, and I would have had a job that I could live off of, and not had to worry about certain issues in my life. So for that, I'm very grateful and I'm very blessed, I think the people now are blessed to have these programs. And it's as far as trans people, accessibility, it's like things like clothing. And I mean, now you don't have to even go shopping. You can be at home and buy your hair, your makeup, your heels, your clothes, your underwear, everything online, and no one, and you don't have to worry about someone saying, "Oh, you can't try it on," or "You shouldn't be in this dressing room," or "You should." All that stuff is now being taken out of their hands. So that in itself is a beautiful thing because that discrimination doesn't have to be at the forefront of someone's fear package of pulling themselves together and building that person that they see in their heads. I mean, even as far as like finding like a mental psychologist or somebody to speak to, more programs now. Like you guys are here in New Haven that you can direct and help people find what they need. Programs like this that I know they have in Hartford and other smaller cities that are building themselves up to. Those are things that I'm so glad our community has now. As far as the club scene, that will never go away. It will never be the same. And this is one thing that people in my generation always be. It's like, oh, everything's changed. Well, things are going to change no matter what.
Well, yeah, it's not like, I mean, the 90s era when you were growing up was not like the 70s and 80s.
Exactly.
Because, there wasn't Coke on every surface.
Exactly. I mean, I have a friend of mine who dwells in that era, and it's like, girl, we have to, at a certain point, say, again, we lived it, what's next?
Right.
Because things are always going to change. And I just hope that, be safe, have fun.
Well, I will say, as you say, have fun. We did get some compliments from the audience about people who saw you at the Dorothy Awards, the Winter Ball, and the Arts and Ideas Show on the New Haven Green, and they said that you were fabulous.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I do what I can do now. I mean, I can't run around the stage like I used to. I'm working on that, hopefully. But I love to perform.
But you know what? I have to say, you don't have to run around on the stage to command.
No, but it's like,
and you do. You command. When you were, like, I think of the Arts and Ideas as a really great example. You literally did not move. You leaned up against that 6-foot table for your life so you would not fall. And for however 4 minutes, however long your mix was, I don't remember, 6 minutes long, the entire green was dead silent. And you could have heard a pin drop because people were so focused on what you were doing.
See,
listen, I was watching.
All I saw were lights.
Yeah, well, that too.
All I saw were lights, and at that point, you hope that people are feeling what you're trying to put out there.
Yeah.
Because as you know, whenever I pick a number or a song, it has some kind of meaning to it. Mm-hmm. I mean, we were joking about how you saw me perform the "Fuck You" song.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, am I supposed to?
You can say that.
Okay.
It's one of my most memorable.
Yeah,
and
that was.
And it was comedy. It was a comedy performance that you did. That you were displeased about. Yeah, that you were displeased a certain person was running for public office.
Exactly.
We won't say because we can't name politicians because we're a 501c3. But
the redheaded ass. I'm like, yeah. I mean, and things. I mean, now it's not so much. I mean, at a certain point, it was like running around being pretty. Mm-hmm. And being, and I was never one. I don't see myself as being fierce, but I whatever I did, I wanted to have fun. I wanted the audience to have fun and take something away from it. And now it's like I have messages where it's like, please vote, please, extend your arms around the next person because you never know who may need it, or just say their names. Just always keep these people's names in your heart and in your mind. Things like that. I mean, whenever I do a number, I always have that in my head.
Well, Bubbles, it was lovely sitting with you,
girl,
and chatting. We got to have our little, I would say fireside chat, but we have a lovely lady side chat today. And it's always great hearing the history, because I know some of it, because I live some of it, but there's so much of it I don't know. And so it's always great hearing from someone who actually lived it and not just reading about it in some online blog.
I'm blessed to still be here. So as long as I'm here, I'll keep talking and running my mouth.
Well, we appreciate it. And thank you all of you who joined us. And again, that was the lovely Tia Lynn Waters, aka Bubblicious, or to her friends, Bubbles. And we are so excited that you all joined us tonight. And I think, excuse me as I hiccup, I'm going to pass it back to Finn to close us out. Finn, maybe?
Night.